It was a rainy morning in Tokyo, December 10th, 1968. The city was busy, like always. People were heading to work. The end of the year was coming. Companies were getting ready to pay out winter bonuses. It was a tradition. A big one at the Nihon Shintaku Ginko, a bank in Kokubunji. 4 employees were loading a car. Not just any car. A black Nissan Cedric. It looked like a regular company car. It wasn't an armored truck. There was no special protection. Inside were 3 metal boxes, and inside those boxes was money. A lot of money. Nearly 300 million yen. This money was for the employees of a Toshiba factory. It was their bonus money. Back then, 300 million yen was worth about 800,000 US dollars. But that doesn't tell the whole story. In today's money, it would be worth over $20 million. It was a fortune. Enough to buy 100 houses, enough to never work again. The 4 bank employees got in the car. They had done this many times before. It was routine. The route was the same. The procedure was the same. They drove off into the gray, wet Tokyo streets. The rain was steady. Windshield wipers swished back and forth. They drove next to the Fuchu prison. A long, high wall marked the edge of the road. It was a normal, boring drive. Nothing seemed out of place. And then they saw him. A police motorcycle was parked on the side of the road. A policeman was standing next to it. He was wearing a white helmet and a black rain poncho. He looked official. He looked like every other motorcycle cop in Tokyo. He stepped into the road. He waved his arm, signaling for the bank car to stop. The driver of the Nissan stopped. Of course he did. He stopped for the police. The cop walked up to the driver's window. He looked serious. He leaned in. He told them there was an urgent message. He said there had been a call. Someone had planted a bomb at the home of their bank manager, and they had received another call, or a warning. The message was clear. There was dynamite under their car. This one. The one they were sitting in. The 4 men in the car froze. A bomb underneath them. It was terrifying, but it also seemed believable. Why? Because it was true that there had been recent threats against the bank manager. They knew about it. This wasn't some random story. It connected to something real. It made the policeman's warning feel urgent and credible. The policeman was calm. He was professional. He told them he needed to check under the car. He said everyone needed to get out immediately. The bank employees didn't hesitate. They scrambled out of the car, their hearts pounding. They backed away, looking for cover. They didn't want to be anywhere near a potential explosion. The policeman got down on his hands and knees. He crawled under the Nissan. The 4 bank employees watched from a distance. They were scared. They were waiting for him to find the dynamite. They trusted him completely. He was the authority figure. He was there to help. Seconds later, they saw smoke. Thick gray smoke started billowing out from under the car. Then they saw flames. It looked like something was on fire. The policeman quickly crawled out from under the car. He was shouting, "It's gonna explode! Get back! It's dynamite!" Panic set in. "Get another one!" The 4 men ran. They took cover behind the prison wall. They were sure the car was about to blow up. They hid, waiting for the massive explosion that would send metal flying everywhere. But there was no explosion. The smoke began to clear. They peeked out from their hiding spot. They saw the policeman. He wasn't running. He was getting into their car. He got behind the wheel, and then he just drove away. The Nissan Cedric, with 3 metal boxes holding 300 million yen, disappeared down the road. The 4 bank employees stood there. They were confused. What just happened? Why would the policeman drive the car away if it had a bomb? They waited. The smoke was gone. The smell of sulfur lingered in the air. The rain kept falling, and then slowly, the truth began to sink in. There was no bomb. The smoke and flames were from a simple road flare he had lit. The man in the uniform wasn't a real policeman. He was a thief, and he had just pulled off the biggest cash heist in Japanese history. He had done it without a gun, without a knife, without any weapon at all. He used a uniform, a clever story, and a $5 flare. He had stolen their minds first, and the money second. The real police arrived soon after. The scene was chaotic. The 4 employees tried to explain what happened. It sounded unbelievable. They were tricked by a fake cop who told them there was a bomb. He lit a flare, scared them away, and just drove off with the money. The investigation that followed was one of the largest in Japanese history. It became a national obsession. The police were under immense pressure. They had been outsmarted. The country's reputation felt like it was on the line. They threw everything they had at the case. Over 170,000 police officers would eventually work on it. They interviewed more than 110,000 people. They followed up on thousands of tips. The thief had left a lot of evidence behind, or so it seemed. This is what made the case so frustrating for the police. They had so many clues, but every single one led to a dead end. First, there was the police motorcycle. The thief had abandoned it. The police checked it out. It was a Yamaha. It had been painted white to look like a police bike, but the paint job was sloppy. They traced the motorcycle, it had been stolen. The real owner had no connection to the crime. Dead end. Then there were the other items the thief left on and around the motorcycle. A helmet, a rain poncho, a speaker to look like a police radio. The police thought this was a gold mine. Surely these items would have fingerprints or led to the man who bought them. They checked the stores, they tried to trace where each item came from, but everything was mass-produced. Thousands of people owned the same kind of helmet, the same kind of poncho. There was nothing unique about them. Dead end. The thief had also abandoned the Nissan Cedric a short time after the heist. He transferred the money to another car he had waiting. The police found the getaway car too, a dark green Toyota. It was also stolen. Inside, they found the empty metal boxes. The money was gone. They dusted everything for fingerprints. They found a few, but none matched anyone in their criminal databases. Oh, dead end. The most bizarre piece of evidence was a comic book found in the second getaway car. Manga. It felt like a deliberate taunt. Was the thief a young person? Was it a clue? Or was it just random trash left in a stolen car? They never knew for sure. The police were drowning in clues that meant nothing. It felt like the thief had planned this. He had carefully selected common, untraceable items. He had created a trail of breadcrumbs that led in a circle. He was playing a game with them, and he was winning. The investigation focused on a few key theories. Maybe it was an inside job. Someone from the bank or the security company must have known the route and the schedule. They investigated every single employee, but they found nothing. Maybe it was a group of people. The planning seemed too detailed for one person. They looked at criminal gangs, the Yakuza. They looked at radical student groups who were very active in Japan in the late 1960s. They were known for bold actions and anti-establishment views. Stealing from a major corporation would fit their ideology. The police rounded up and questioned many students. But again, nothing. No one confessed. No evidence linked any group to the crime. Then the investigation took a dark and tragic turn. The police developed a prime suspect. He was a young man, only 19 years old. He was the son of a respected police officer. Let's call him Boy S, as he was referred to in the press to protect his identity. The case against Boy S was purely circumstantial, but it looked compelling at first. He lived near the bank. He knew the area. He was part of a small local gang of delinquents known for petty theft. He looked a little bit like the composite sketches that were made from the bank employees' descriptions. The police were convinced he was their man. They brought him in for questioning. They grilled him for hours. They searched his room. They put immense pressure on him and his family. The media got wind of it. His name and picture were leaked. He became the face of the crime. He was judged and convicted in the court of public opinion. Boy S had an alibi. He said he was at home at the time of the robbery. His family backed him up. But the police didn't believe him. They kept pushing. The pressure was unbearable. For the young man, his life was over. Even if he was innocent, he was now famous for being the lead suspect in the biggest heist in Japan. His family was shamed. His father, the police officer, was humiliated. Just a few days after the heist, on December 15, 1968, Boy S committed suicide. He took his own life using potassium cyanide. He left no note. He never confessed. His death was a shock. For many, it seemed like an admission of guilt. Why would he kill himself if he was innocent? But for others, it was a tragedy, a story of a young man hounded to death by a desperate police force and a ravenous media. For months later, the police had to admit their mistake. They tested the poison he used. It was not the same type of chemical that could have been used to make the smoke for the flare in the robbery. They found no evidence of the stolen money, and his alibi held up. Boy S was officially cleared. He was innocent. The suicide of their prime suspect was a huge blow to the investigation. And it was a moral failure. They had focused so much on one person that they had lost valuable time. And worse, an innocent young man was dead. The police force was deeply embarrassed. The public started to lose faith in them. The lead detective on the case was a man named Mitsuo Hiratsuka. He was a legendary figure in the Tokyo Police Department. He was known for his incredible intuition and his relentless pursuit of criminals. He had solved many famous cases. This 300 million yen heist became his personal obsession. He saw it as the ultimate challenge. He vowed he would not retire until he caught the thief. Hiratsuka and his team chased down every lead, no matter how small. They analyzed the thief's handwriting from a threatening letter sent before the heist. They analyzed the way the tape was wrapped around the fake dynamite sticks. They studied the brands of every item left behind. They created a profile of the thief. He was likely young, intelligent, and a meticulous planner. He was confident, maybe even arrogant. He knew police procedures well enough to imitate them perfectly. The years started to pass. The bills were consecutively numbered, which should have made them easy to spot, but they vanished. This suggested the thief was incredibly patient. He didn't rush out to spend his fortune. Or maybe he had a way to launder the money that the police couldn't trace. The public's fascination with the case never faded. It became a modern legend. The thief was given a nickname, the Man of a Thousand Faces. He was a ghost. A phantom who appeared for a few minutes on a rainy day, performed a masterpiece of a crime, and then disappeared from the face of the earth. For some, he became a kind of folk hero. He was a symbol of rebellion. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't use violence, he simply outsmarted the entire system, the bank, the corporation, the police. In an era of student protests and anti-authoritarian sentiment, his crime resonated with people who felt powerless. He was David against Goliath, and David had won. Books were written about the heist. Movies and TV dramas were made. The composite sketch of the thief, a young man in a police helmet, became an iconic image in Japan. Everyone had a theory about who he was and what happened to the money. As the years went by, a legal deadline approached. In Japan, there is a statute of limitations for crimes. For robbery, the criminal statute of limitations was 7 years. This meant that if the police did not charge a suspect within 7 years, the thief could no longer be prosecuted for the crime. He would be legally free. The deadline was December 10th, 1975, 7 years to the day after the heist. As the date got closer, the media frenzy intensified. It became a national countdown. Would the police make a last-minute breakthrough? Would the thief, now safe from prosecution, finally reveal himself? It was a dramatic moment. Detective Hiratsuka was still on the case. He was older now. The case had worn him down. It was his white whale. He felt the deadline approaching like a personal failure. On the final day, he went to the grave of Boy S., the young man who had killed himself. He went to pay his respects and to apologize. It was a somber admission of the investigation's greatest mistake. Midnight struck on December 10th, 1975. The 7 years were up. The police held a press conference. They officially announced that the statute of limitations had expired. The thief was a free man. He could walk into a police station, confess to the entire crime, and they could do nothing to him. It was a huge moment of national disappointment and fascination. The perfect crime had been... The thief had won. He had waited out the law itself. But there was one more legal hurdle. While the criminal case was closed, there was still a civil case. The bank and the insurance company could still sue the thief to get their money back. The statute of limitations for a civil claim was 20 years, so while he couldn't go to jail, he could still be forced to return the money if he was ever identified. This meant the thief had to remain a ghost for another 13 years. He had to keep his secret. He had to live a quiet life, never drawing attention to himself. He could not suddenly become a millionaire playboy. He had to be a normal person. The years continued to pass. The 1970s gave way to the 1980s, and Japan's economy boomed. 300 million yen was still a lot of money, but not the unimaginable fortune it once. The case faded from the front pages, but never from public memory. It was the great unsolved mystery. Detective Hiratsuka retired, as he had promised he would. He had failed to solve the one case that defined his later career. He passed away in 1989, never knowing the identity of his phantom adversary. Finally, in 1988, the second deadline passed. The 20-year statute of limitations for the civil case expired. Now, the story was truly over. The money legally belonged to the thief. If he was still alive, he was in his 40s or 50s. He could finally spend the money without any fear of legal consequences. He was completely and totally free. So, who was he? To this day, nobody knows for sure. The case is officially closed and unsolved. But the theories have never stopped. Over the years, several people have claimed to be the thief. Books have been published with supposed confessions, but none have ever been proven. They were likely hoaxes, people looking for attention or money. One of the most persistent theories is that it was not just one man. It may have been a small group. The planning was so intricate, the execution so flawless, that it seems hard to believe one person did it all. A group would also make it easier to hide and launder the money. Maybe the members of the group made a pact of silence, and they all kept it for their entire lives. Another theory goes back to the student radicals. Perhaps a small, disciplined cell of activists planned the heist to fund their operations. This would explain their ability to disappear back into a larger movement and their motivation to keep silent. For them, it wouldn't have been a crime for personal gain, but a political act. And then there is the theory that it was, in fact, the son of the police officer, Boy S. Some people believe he was guilty after all. They think he was the mastermind. His suicide in this version of the story was not an act of desperation from an innocent boy, but a calculated move. A way to end the investigation, to throw the police off the scent, and to protect his accomplices who were still out there with the money. It's a dark and cynical theory, but one that some people still hold. But the most romantic and enduring image is that of a lone genius. A single, brilliant individual who saw a flaw in the system and exploited it, a man who was not a hardened criminal, but an ordinary person who, for a brief moment, became extraordinary. He planned his crime like a chess master, thinking 10 moves ahead. He knew what evidence to leave and what to hide. He knew the psychology of the bank employees and the police. Think about the sheer audacity of his plan. He didn't need a gun because the authority of a police uniform was more powerful. He didn't need a real bomb because the idea of a bomb was more terrifying. He relied on human nature. He knew people would obey a uniform. He knew they would panic in the face of a perceived threat. He used their own minds against them. And what about the money? What does a person do with that much cash? You couldn't start buying mansions and sports cars. You would be discovered immediately. The thief had to be as patient after the crime as he was meticulous before it. He probably had to live a double life. A normal working person on the surface. But underneath, he was the man who held one of Japan's biggest secrets. He would see his own composite sketch on TV. He would read about the investigation in the newspapers. He would listen to people on the train talking about the Great Heist, speculating about who the thief was, and he would just sit there quietly, knowing it was him. Maybe he spent the money slowly, carefully, over decades. A little bit here, a little bit there. Or maybe he never spent it at all. Maybe for him the thrill was not in the money, but in the act itself. The challenge, the satisfaction of pulling off the perfect crime. Perhaps the money is still out there, hidden in an attic or buried in a forest, a monument to his genius. The 300 million yen heist is more than just a story about stolen money. It's a story about psychology, timing, and luck. It's a story about a society's obsession with a mystery it cannot solve. It reveals the weaknesses in our systems and our own predictable human behaviors. The thief created a myth. He became a legend precisely because he was never caught. If he had been arrested, he would have just been another criminal, a man with a name, a face, and a prison sentence. But because he vanished, he remains an idea. He is the ultimate trickster, the ghost in the machine. The rain has long since stopped falling on that street in Fuchu. The world has changed dramatically since 1968. But the story of the man in the police uniform remains. It's a reminder that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a weapon at all. It's a clever story. And the most secure vault is not made of steel, but of silence. Somewhere out there, an old man may be smiling, remembering a rainy day when he became a phantom and pulled off Japan's greatest heist. Or perhaps the secret died with him, a final perfect act of vanishing. We will never know. And that is why we will never forget.